everybody, and welcome to On the Road with AutoTrader, where we make car stuff simple for Canadians. My name is Jodi, and I'm the editor-in-chief of AutoTrader.
And my name is Dan Alika, and I am AutoTrader's road test editor, who noticed instead of doing your like over the rainbow flourish, you've now done this like very 50s, like, you know, like it's that easy. Like
it's my RuPaul move. He always does this.
Okay.
And may the best drag queen win.
Okay. Now I understand.
That's where it comes from.
Okay.
But I get the vibe. Yeah. So we are back with some of your favorite episodes, guys. This is part 3 of Am I the Jerk?
Back by popular demand, or just because me and Jodi wanted to do it. I'm not sure.
Honestly, I feel like these episodes are so fun because we low-key love judging people on their bad behavior.
Just coming right out and saying it.
I mean, okay, so if you are unfamiliar, we have part 1 and 2 previously published. Basically, there's this subreddit called Am I the A-hole? And it's where people post about like conflicts that they've had where they're not sure if they're in the right or the wrong. And so the people of Reddit get to vote on whether or not they were the a-hole or they were right. And so like we do this all the time in our personal time. So whenever we can do it on the show, we always get a good kick out of it.
And I, just like last time or the last 2 times, Jodi compiled these. She's the Reddit expert. So I'm literally finding out each of these. Like I'm going to read some and Jodi's going to read some. But I have not looked at these at all before right now. So I'm finding these out as you guys find out.
Okay. The first one, entry number 1. Am I the a-hole for kicking somebody out of my car after they called it a car?
That's a little, like, yes. I mean, that's a little, I wouldn't kick someone out. It also reminds me of a Seinfeld episode.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a funny episode where George is going to buy a car and he says he wants something safe and reliable, and he's talking about getting a Volvo, and then he goes to this used car lot and he's like thinks he's going to pull the trigger, and then the salesperson mentions this LeBaron convertible and he says that it was John Voight's, and George is so taken by the fact that this is a former, what he thinks is a former celebrity's or a celebrity's former car, that he buys it. And then Jerry looks at the ownership and realizes that the name is spelled differently. And so he's making fun of him in the car, and George kicks him out of the car. And he says, "You're ruining my experience with John Voight's car."
I mean, that's okay. So listen to the story. So the other day, my friends and I were heading out to an arcade place, and I was the one to pick them up and drive them because why not? I have my full license and I'm the most experienced. Now I'm a university student. I'm thankful that I have a car in the first place. It's a 2007 Civic. It drives well, great on gas, cheap on insurance, gets me to point A to point B safely with no troubles. I personally don't care that it's that old. If it gets me somewhere without a hassle, I'm more than happy. Now, I went to pick up my friends, and it turns out that one of them was bringing a +1. I didn't mind, of course, the more the merrier. Unfortunately, they turned out to be really disrespectful. As my friend's partner was getting in the car, he commented that this was such a car. Without hesitation, I turned around and I told him to get out. He looked at me for a second and tried to apologize, but I was not having it. His girlfriend also got out of the car, and I took the rest of our friends home. Also, they didn't even go to the arcade at the end of the day. He was just like, "Day's canceled, I'm done."
Wow, that's a real mom move.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We're not going to the arcade.
So I feel like this guy maybe have overreacted a little bit, or he's maybe being a little bit too sensitive about it. Because, like, I don't know.
That's silly, man.
Friends, I feel like, can roast each other all the time.
I mean, I don't know. Come on. I'm not saying it's a car, but like it's a 17-year-old Civic from the worst Civic generation of all Civic generations.
Oh my God. 2007. I was like, it's not that old. You're right. It is old.
Yeah. So, you know, it's old.
I mean, I feel like, those people could have been more respectful.
A car is a car, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't, if somebody, back when I owned like a 98 Toyota Tercel, if somebody told me it was a car, I'd be like,
sure is.
Cool, bro. Like, you know, that's how I get around.
I mean, I say that my car is a crappy car all the time.
But do you call it a car?
No.
Oh.
I respect my car.
I've nicknamed Jodi's car Pat C-Jack. Jodi didn't understand. So her license plate, the first 4 digits are 5 digits, CJAK. So she showed up to pick me up one time, and I'm like, "Oh, you came with Pat?" And she was like, "What?" And I was like, Pat, you brought Pat. And she's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, it's Pat Seajack. And then you told me you appreciated it. It took a second.
It took a second. You had to explain the joke, but afterwards I was like, okay, that's cute.
Yeah.
I think I was confused is because like my boyfriend's kids call it cupcake. So we just refer to it as cupcake.
Why?
They really love food, I guess.
I don't know. That's just I thought there was like a backstory.
No, there's no backstory. I'm always like, hey, what should we name this car? And it's always some kind of food, like raspberry. Or if it's a blue truck, they'll be like blueberry. They're not very creative.
Wow. All right. Well, moving on. It's my turn to read Am I the I'm just saying it because our good friend and producer, Chris, will take care of all of those.
There's going to be a lot of beeping in this episode.
All those swears. Okay. Ready?
Okay, let's go.
Am I the for leaving my car profanely vandalized? My own car?
This one is spicy, and I really like this one.
Okay. A month ago, I parked in a spot on a public road, the street I live on, that someone had tried to save for themselves using a folding chair. I usually won't do that, but it was the only spot left. Anyway, the next Monday, I went to take my car to work, and somebody had spray painted B.I. across the whole side of my car. I went to the cops, and it wasn't too hard to figure out what did it. A few neighbors knew who always put the chair out to save the spot and figured it was them. A neighbor's doorbell camera feed proved it. I got a $1,200 settlement for the damages and decided not to use it to fix my car because my car is a $2,500 junker that I'm planning on replacing within the year anyways. Some might even call it a car. I don't know.
Yeah, that would have been deserved.
I instead got my boyfriend, whose office has a vinyl sticker printer, to print me a big red sticker saying bad and another that's a censoring exclamation point, and I put it on my car so it reads bad now. My friends and coworkers think it's funny. I work in a trade where much cruder stuff gets tossed around every day, so it's no big deal driving it to work. If anything, I've gotten more respect for driving my bad mobile around. But I've heard from other neighbors that it's one, pissing off my neighbor that did it because it's reminding him I took his money and didn't do anything to fix my car. Two, annoying a dad who lives on the street because he doesn't want his kids seeing it. And three, annoying a couple other people who think it makes our area look trashy. Am I the for not covering up my vandalized car and taking humor from it instead?
I would say not.
Wow.
Do you agree?
No, I think it's a terrible move.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm actually like, I kind of respect this person because they took a crappy situation and turned it funny. And I can almost guarantee you that like the people who are complaining about, oh, it makes I don't want my kids to see it. Your kids are already swearing. And what about all the people with the F Trudeau stickers on their trucks?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I see, for me, I think it's maybe not quite like, territory, but I think it's like I would not be doing that. Even if it's this whatever $2,200 junker or whatever she said it is. I would spray paint over it. I wouldn't like fix it. I wouldn't, take it somewhere to get it removed. But it's like, if you're just leaving the spray paint on anyways, just spray paint over the words because you're getting rid of it soon. To me, it's just like, it's kind of trashy looking. Obviously, I haven't seen it. I'm just picturing it in my mind's eye. And I also like, this is maybe the first one of these we've ever done where I'm a little bit skeptical of its authenticity.
Really? You think this person is maybe exaggerating it? Or?
I mean, like the audacity of someone to spray paint in big letters because they had their parking spot taken. And then apparently it was caught on camera, and yet all this person got was a $1,200 judgment. That means it's a small claims court.
Yeah, I don't think she would have charged
But she said she went to the
criminal
cops.
charges.
But it literally said that she went to the cops.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm just saying it's a little too, I don't know, like it's a little too Ohio. Isn't that the thing? I don't know. Maybe I'm misusing that.
I actually don't know how that one is used.
Oh, I thought it was like, this is like, it's so trashy. It could only happen in Ohio. That was my interpretation.
I mean, I don't know much about Ohio, but if that's the case.
Well.
Anyway, I don't think this person's being a jerk. I think like the person who put their chair out to save the parking spot's a jerk.
Sure, but you can both be jerks.
Yeah, that's true too.
I can't imagine driving, and sure, like, whatever you want to call this, like making lemons here, or making lemonade out of lemons here. But it's like, to me, driving around like that is not very like, it's just not. Yeah, I don't like if somebody pulled up to come over to my place and they had that spot, I wouldn't want them parked in my driveway.
Oh, I wouldn't care about that.
It's just weird.
I mean, it's weird, but people put t-shirts on with, weirder things on them.
But you don't have to walk with them. You know what I mean?
Them.
Well, I would just be like, cool, man, if you're going to wear that t-shirt, or like, I don't have friends that are dumb enough to have a no sticker on their car. But if they did, I would be like, I'm not getting in your car. Like, that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
For them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think this is kind of the same.
I mean, maybe this
way.
person just has a really like high embarrassment tolerance.
I have a high embarrassment tolerance, and I wouldn't get in that car. I'm telling you right now.
I wouldn't care so much about this.
I just think it's a bad look. And it is. Like, I understand the neighbors being like, you're like, it makes the neighborhood look a little. Well, that's like saying like, oh, there's a car in your driveway on cinder blocks. Do you think you could take it off? And you're like, no. Like, I'm not easily embarrassed. And it's like, yeah, but it makes the curb appeal matters. And if your neighbor has a car that has big spray painted red letters that say bad on it, you're going to be like, maybe this isn't the look I was going for.
No, I get that. But it's also like your personal property, right? So like I mean, unless it's breaking some kind of like decency laws or something, like, I don't know.
To me, sometimes like morality, supersedes and like decency to your like neighbors isn't about breaking the law. It's about being like, how would people feel about this?
Okay, so another example that's similar to this that I didn't include it in this episode, but I read it as part of my research for this, is that this one girl, she has like a pink car, very cute pink car. She parks it on the driveway. And her neighbor has filed multiple complaints about it because she says it's tacky and it's affecting the property values in the same way that this like, bad car is. But it's just a pink car.
Yeah, like a hue on a car isn't the same as big spray painted letters. You know what I mean? I
suppose.
Like, how, to me, say it's not a car. Say it's a garage. If somebody spray paints graffiti on the back of the garage, right? Like that. People hate that for a reason because it's not the greatest look, right? That's all I'm saying. I do understand. I'm not saying that it's the worst thing in the world, but I do think that it's not very self-respecting I get trying to own it, but it's like, for how long? You're going to drive around like this for a year? That seems silly to me. I don't know.
I mean, I still
We're
say
at odds.
Good for her. I know this is one of the only ones we disagree on, but I don't think she's done anything wrong. I think she was the victim here of a jerk, and she's trying to be funny about it. And this is very much like a mind your own business kind of deal, right?
I don't like it.
I mean, there's lots of stuff that happens in my neighborhood that I don't love, but I'm not going to get up in arms about it,
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to the next one.
Okay. You're like, I'm over this. Okay. Yeah. Am I the a-hole for getting my neighbor's Airbnb guest's car towed?
Yes.
So I've had a ton of issues with Airbnb as my neighborhood in the past. I won't get into all of it, but just know that it's been a nightmare. Fast forward to last night, the guests at the Airbnb next door were blocking our shared driveway. I went out and politely asked them to move their car. They responded rudely saying, "Ain't got the keys, no," and they drove off in another car. I've tried reaching out to the Airbnb owner before, but she hasn't responded to me since May. Given her track record of ignoring my messages, I assumed she wouldn't do anything this time either. So I shot her a quick text and then I called the non-emergency police line, explained the situation, and they said they would make the guests move it. Well, it turns out they towed the car instead, and now the Airbnb owner is furious, saying that I didn't give her guests a chance to move it. Am I the a-hole for calling the cops on them?
Okay, no, so that's the thing.
You needed the context.
Yeah, like, because at first I was thinking that this was going to be the kind of story where it was like, they were parking and they were on my side and blah, blah, blah. Right. And it's like, to me, that's not on the guest, right? It's like, but if she asked and they said no and were kind of rude about it, then yeah, sure. I mean, she's claiming that it wasn't her intent to have it towed and that the tow company or the police decided to tow it and they had the grounds to do that. So it's like, no, she's not the jerk for doing it. It's like those guests should have. When I go to Airbnbs, I'm always like, if there's, if there's a neighbor or whatever, and not that I go have like raging parties, but it's like okay, literally 2 days after this episode airs or we record, my buddies and I are going to Ottawa. We do like an annual trip, but Connor, crazy guy, we always go down to Rochester, but he realized his passport it was expired.
Come on, are you new here?
Honestly, it's annoying. So we're pivoting and we're going to go to Ottawa instead. We booked an Airbnb, and it's like, I always make sure, that we're not like being too loud and that we're respectful, because
of course,
ultimately it's like, I don't want that to reflect poorly on us, of course, but also that you're a guest. Your stay there is temporary, but those other people have to live there.
Right.
And so it's like, I wouldn't want to disrupt their lives just to have, one night of fun. And this to me seems so unnecessary to park and block a driveway.
Well, especially because they were rude. If someone said, "Oh, you're blocking my driveway," I'd be like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I'll move right away," right? Like, these people obviously kind of got what was coming to them.
Okay. So
that's our judgment. This person was not the jerk.
Yes.
Okay.
Am I the for not negotiating to leave our toddler in a car? What? As the title says, my husband is angry because I got very upset about how he handled the situation with our toddler. I came home from an appointment today and asked how things went while I was gone. My husband said that our 3-year-old fell asleep in the car and he ran into a coffee shop to grab a drink while our son slept. When I asked him if he brought our toddler with him, he said no. I told him that he cannot leave our child unattended in a car. He said it was only for 90 seconds and the door was locked. I told him there was no negotiating in this situation, and if he cannot take our son with him, I would prefer him not to take him on the drive and to leave him with me. I told him someone could steal the car with our toddler in the back. He can wake up scared, etc. My husband has left the house angrily because he said I won't listen to his thoughts about why that's okay. Am I the here? I really like that this lady is venting. Like she said, my husband has left the house angrily. Like, this is real time. She wrote this like
as it
he
happened.
Just left, and she's like, boy, I got a rant about this jerk.
So this one I feel like is a little bit controversial, but there have also been so many unfortunate things that happen when kids are left in cars, like on a hot day, on a cold day.
Cars
and
being stolen, it's rare, but you do hear about it.
Yeah, and so I don't think this person's fears are
unfounded.
Unfounded.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I would say always err on the side of caution and like don't leave cars. Don't leave your kids or pets in the car.
Don't leave cars with kids. No, my problem is like, I'm not a parent, so I'm always very careful with these ones because I'm like, asking me as a non-parent, I would be like, no, this lady isn't the
like my parents left us in cars all the time when we were little.
I'm trying to think. I mean, if I were a certain age,
yeah,
like I remember if my brother, we were like 9 and 10.
Not a toddler though.
No, as a toddler, I don't think my parents would have done that.
No, I don't think my parents did either.
So as a non-parent, I'm like, well, this seems weird, especially given all the stories that we've heard about, bad stuff happening. But I'm not trying to like be the remote parent here. I don't know what it's like, and I can also imagine that it's like if a kid, you always hear people complain about toddlers, falling asleep and being grumpy if they can't sleep and don't get their nap.
Right.
So I'm like, I don't know. It did the dad.
Maybe he thought he was doing the better thing.
Yeah.
And maybe it wasn't a convenience thing.
This is a tough one.
I feel like maybe we need more context. Maybe we should have heard what his excuse or what his reason was for leaving the kid. And then that way we could have made a better judgment. But I feel there's a bit of a gray zone on this.
We'll call this one like a stalemate. Like I'm leaning towards he's the jerk.
But we need more context. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's you, right?
I would say especially, like, was it a hot day? If it was a hot day, obviously don't leave them inside. I think that's like a hard and fast rule, right?
I've heard like, this whole thing about like hot or not, it doesn't matter. And don't do it. And, you have heard these horror stories and, one not that long ago here in the GTA. Now he was older. It wasn't a toddler, but like had like suffocated with the seatbelt and died like strangled by the seatbelt. So it's like kids in cars in general by themselves. It's a touchy subject for sure. And I just don't know, like, I think I would turn it around and ask, like, sure, he's saying, oh, it was only 90 seconds and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, the other day I went for a run, right? And I was running down the sidewalk and I'm running towards, there's a very kind of small parking area. It's not really a parking area. And this Bell Canada, like, technician is backed into the spot, but the whole front end of his truck is completely blocking the sidewalk. And then I see this little kid, like, have to bike around the front of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got up there, I said to the guy, I wasn't rude about it. I just said, like, listen, man, I understand you're working, because he had his lights flashing and whatever. I said, I understand you're working. I'm not saying that, but I'm like, that kid just had to bike around your truck. And I'm like, what if there was someone coming that the kid didn't see because you were, blocking that? And he was like, well, I would never let that happen. And I'm like, but that to me is like, you can't just, sure, that's like, I can say the same thing about anything. I would never, but it's like.
But you're also working, so you're not paying attention.
Exactly. So I'm like, it just seemed like this same sort of thing. It's like, it was only 90 seconds. And it's like, yeah, but crazy things can happen in 90 seconds.
And there have been stories of stuff happening like that before. Yeah. So I would personally always err on the side of caution, even if it ends up being more inconvenient.
Yeah.
I feel like the payoff of just knowing your kid is safe and secure is so much better.
I am like, I hate drive-throughs. Like, that is one of those things for me. Like, I will avoid them at all costs.
But maybe in this case.
But it's like, yo, pops, your kid's asleep, and go to a different coffee shop, man. If that one doesn't have a drive-through, like, that's why I'm like, he does seem kind of like the jerk, because it's like, there are ways around it.
Yeah.
No coffee is an easy one. Bring the kid in.
And let's be real, no coffee shop takes 90 seconds to do anything. No, not even a McDonald's.
But still, it's just this idea that, like, there are solutions here. Yep. It's not like this was a life or, like, if this dad was like, listen, I saw someone on the sidewalk having a heart attack and I jumped out of the car, and the wife was like, how could you do that with the kid? I'd be like, come on, like, he was doing the right thing. Yeah. But it's like, this was not a life or death situation.
Totally.
He could have gone to a coffee shop with a drive-through. He could have just not got the coffee at all, or he could have woken the kid up or left the kid at home. Those are 4 options that apparently were on the table that he just went, 90 seconds.
Or, I mean, you could have just like, no, I guess a 3-year-old has a bigger car seat, so you can't just like lift them out and take them with you.
Yeah.
Right. You'd have to wake them up.
The kid up.
Yeah.
But still, there are alternatives out there. So this seems a little,
Okay, so that's our judgment then. The husband was being the a-hole.
Yes.
Okay,
this one's you.
All right. Am I the a-hole for costing a car salesman his commission?
I like that you said a salesman, not a salesman.
A salesman.
A salesman.
A saleswoman.
I know, but it's
salesman.
A salesman.
Salesman.
Anyways.
Okay. Supermarket.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I say weird. So I've kind of tried to edit this one because it was really long. So there's a woman, she needed a new car, and she took her boyfriend to the dealership with her. They were very clear from the beginning that it was going to be her car. So this is her now. From start to finish, the sales guy kept talking to my boyfriend, even though I clearly introduced myself and told him the car was for me and that I would be paying outright for it. My boyfriend was even put off and kept referring the salesman to me when he asked my boyfriend a question, and he even pointedly said, I don't know, it's her car, ask her. The sales guy would never look at me, or I'd answer, and then the next question, he'd go back to my boyfriend. The only question I was asked was around color preference and leather versus fabric interior. I was fuming at this point. The final straw was after the test drive. Of course, he gave the keys to my boyfriend, and I said that I really liked the car, and he returned to my boyfriend and asked if he should get the paperwork ready. I interjected and said I wanted to think about it. I had really already decided on the car, but I didn't want the commission to go to him. My boyfriend could tell I was a bit upset about this interaction, and offered to go to another dealership tomorrow morning or leave a review or something. So we left and we came back the next morning and spoke to a different salesperson who greeted us. He was much better. I told him that we already drove the car yesterday and we decided to buy it. No hassles with this guy. He even managed I even managed to negotiate some extras since I told him I was giving him a sale for very little effort on his part. But I was recounting the story to a friend of mine yesterday who was in sales and told me that I was being an a-hole because the previous salesman had done all the work and I still gave the sale to someone else, even though I was wanting to buy the car anyway. He said that I should have asserted myself more on the spot, and given the previous salesman more of a chance rather than trying to screw him over behind his back because he'd never know why he lost the sale. So he also said that sales was a tough job and maybe old habits die hard. Or if I didn't want to buy from him at all, I should have given him a concrete reason so he could learn. My thing is, it's basic sales 101 to speak to the person who holds the purse strings. Also, it's not my job to teach a salesperson anything. I just want to have a smooth experience when buying a car. So, am I the a-hole for going out of my way to not give a sale to what I believed was a sexist salesman?
No, okay, listen. There's no this friend of hers, whatever. There's no like excuse for misogyny, right? To me, this guy's being sexist by continually, if the story is kind of as accurate as they're portraying it to be, that no, it's like this guy was clearly being weird and addressing the boyfriend instead of her is not okay. Here's what I will say. This still does not mean that she's the jerk, but I do sort of agree with the one thing that her salesperson friend said, which is that, the salesperson said, while you not giving a valid reason, and her response being that it's not up to me to teach a salesperson anything. It's like, okay, but to me, I'll give an example. Before I bought my Golf, I had it narrowed down, and I went to this dealership, and the guy went out to like gas up the car or whatever, and this salesperson, it was a woman, and she was talking, and we somehow got on the topic of that crime was up in the neighborhood around the dealership, and she just started like spouting off racist nonsense about, oh, it's these immigrants, and ever since these immigrants moved into the neighborhood. And so I waited until the guy got back, and it just so happened to be the manager, and he pulled up, and then we went outside, and then I was like, I explained to both of them to their face why I was walking away, because it's like, yeah, sure, I understand what she's saying. Oh, it's not up to me to explain, to teach the salesperson, I think, but it kind of is, right? Human decency, sure, whether it resonates with the guy or not, that's not your job, but it's your job as a person to be like, hey, dude, and maybe on her boyfriend to be like, hey, like a little bit more, to the point, and saying, hey, like you continue to address me instead of my girlfriend, and she's the one who's buying the car, and we're walking away. Now, what I will say, and it still doesn't make her, a jerk. This isn't about costing, in my mind, about costing the guy the commission. If it was possible to go to a different dealership, I would have done that, because it's like now you're creating internal, because no salesperson is going to say no to a commission. Right. So this guy that she went to, or a person, she didn't say whether it was a guy or a girl, but this person that she went to the next day isn't going to be like, oh, sorry, no. But now that other salesperson is going to find out that she came back and bought the car. And now you're creating conflict. Like, they're very competitive, right? They have sales quotas and stuff that they have to hit. And it's like, if, you've created this, sure, maybe the punishment fits the crime. He was rude, so you've done something to stick it to him. But it's like, you've also put that other salesperson in a bit of an awkward position because you went to them and instead of just going to a different store. If she would have gone, and maybe, I don't know, she said that they could have gone to a different one the next day. So I'm assuming that that's true. Maybe there wasn't another dealership close by, and she just decided to go back. I don't know. But anyways, it still doesn't mean that she's a jerk, but it's like, you got to think about that other salesperson that got the commission could face some awkwardness with their colleague that is, unfortunate for them, that there could be blowback for that person.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, this is tricky, because I honestly, like, nobody deserves to be disrespected like that. And
absolutely.
To me, if that happened to me, I would be pretty upset to the point where I wouldn't even want to talk to this guy anymore, right? So if I just walked out, but honestly, I think maybe the partner should have stepped it up a little bit. But at the same time,
But then are we not?
Does she owe this guy anything? I don't think she owes this sales guy anything.
And then, like, to be so bold to play devil's advocate, right? And we both said it. So I'm not saying you said maybe the partner should have stepped it up. Then are we not reinforcing those same gender roles that this salesperson was?
Well, no, because for me, like I said, I'd be too upset that I wouldn't even want to talk to this guy because it apparently, like, okay, so my problem with this, if I said like, hey, I'm not really comfortable with the way you're addressing me, some people would get really up in arms about that. And I don't like conflict. And I know the right thing would be for me to stand my ground and to say like, listen, I'm the one buying the car. I need to be respected or I will go somewhere else.
But that's what I'm saying. But that was my point, right? Is like when I said earlier, like, sure. And I said the same thing. I'm only saying it to play devil's advocate, right? That if this sales guy was continually addressing her boyfriend and not her, for both of us to say maybe the boyfriend should have stood up and been more firm and say, hey, it's for her and stop talking to me. Then,
I mean, he did say it once.
But is it reinforcing those same gender roles and those same stereotypes that this salesperson was?
I don't think so, because I think if he spoke up a little more, I feel like that's what an ally maybe should do.
I agree. No, I personally agree. And I said this, and you know me, Jodi.
Yeah.
I am
and you're
the
a great
first
ally.
I'm the first one to step up and say, but I'm just genuinely curious because not everyone, like you said, not everyone responds well to that. Not everyone is comfortable doing that. But also, if that salesperson is doing this, something tells me that, just a quick little reminder of it isn't going to change their perspective.
I think saying nothing is worse. I feel like, because this guy doesn't know what he did wrong.
Yeah.
Right? But even if he didn't agree that he was doing anything wrong, which something tells me he might have been like, oh, lady, you're just being crazy or you're on your period or something, right? Like
that would be just the ultimate
slap
doubling
in the face,
down.
I know.
But my thing is she's still not a jerk, but she should have either said something to this sales guy and said, listen, like, I'm walking away from this because of how you acted, and or gone to a different to avoid that conflict between the two salespeople. Because if that person finds out that she came back and bought the car, then they're going to feel jaded, and who knows what the repercussions are between them, right? The dynamic between those two salespeople.
I think if it was me and I didn't want to talk to this sales guy anymore, I'd maybe go to the manager and be like, hey, this is what happened. This is what went down. This is your dealership. Totally. You handle this the way you feel is right, but I do not want to work with this guy.
Yeah.
And then the onus is on the manager to correct the situation.
Oh, I agree with you entirely.
And that way, maybe that awkward interaction between those two salespeople would still happen, but at least it wouldn't be my fault.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think maybe that's what I would have done in that situation.
All right.
But honestly, when stuff like this happens and women are put on the spot, I understand the anger and
of course, so do I.
I would understand wanting to get revenge in some kind of way. So
but
I get it.
But my thing is ultimately, and the reason why, whether it's her saying something to him or like you said, saying something to the manager, if you don't, then this salesperson could continue to do that to the next woman that comes to him and the next one after that. So it's like, who's going to break the cycle? Yeah, there's not a responsibility. You don't owe it to the sales guy, but you owe it to other people to at least try. That's always my thing, right? Is the reason why you say something is because whether or not it resonates doesn't matter, but do you feel better, at the end of the day going, I did my part, right? So that's why, talking to the manager, talking to the salesperson, whatever the case may be, don't just walk away. I agree with you, right? It doesn't have to be, I've said this to you before, it doesn't have to be because I know, you're not a confrontational person by nature, but not everything has to be a confrontation. There are ways that things can be handled that are still, polite and remain civil, so they don't make you uncomfortable, but they still deliver the message that you're trying to deliver. So leaving and coming back the next day, talking to the manager, calling, sending an email, instead of just going to the other salesperson and go, hey, want to make a quick commission? I was in here yesterday and your colleague took care of me, but now I want to.
Well, I don't know if that context wasn't in here either.
Sure,
I don't know if she mentioned this.
No, but she did say that she got some
other person, but I don't know if she explained it. Did she?
But if you read again, she said something about how she got some extras thrown in because she told him that she was saving him all the hassle because she had already came in the next day.
Okay, so maybe he doesn't know why, but he knows that he didn't have to do a lot of work for the sale.
Exactly. So anyways.
And so a lot of the comments on this Reddit post were like, part of sales is being a good salesperson, and it seemed like this one was just a bad salesperson,
totally.
right?
But that's what I'm saying. But how do you and you don't owe it to that person, you owe it to the next clients that he deals with.
Yeah, because I would hate for him to continue treating people like this, right? So I feel like I would have to say something, but I also understand not wanting to be confrontational and perhaps putting yourself in like an even more vulnerable position, right? So that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
That's a tricky one, but that's our last one for today. Before our Ask an Expert segment, here's a message from your friends at AutoTrader. Having trouble finding your perfect car at the perfect price? The answer is AutoTrader. Car prices are dropping across Canada, and AutoTrader has hundreds of thousands of new and used cars to choose from. Get a great deal on your perfect car by visiting AutoTrader today. Today's Ask an Expert comes from Maroon, one of our loyal supporters. Hi, Jodi and Dan. Excuse me. Thank you again for your excellent show. I have 2 questions I'd like to ask. I recently came across an article on CNBC that discusses how Volvo and other major European automakers are reconsidering their 2030 deadline to fully transition to electric vehicles. I was surprised by this development. What are your thoughts on this shift? And this is a 2-part question, and I'll do the other part later.
I think it is, sentiment has dipped. Obviously, we've seen that with internal data that Barish and his team have dug into. They do an annual survey on this, and the general sentiment before. I'm sure you remember, Maroon, as an EV owner, that people said, 400 kilometers at first was like the number that people wanted to see in terms of range, and then they would consider. And now consideration has dropped because of access to chargers and whatnot, and it's all very real. And we've talked about this before. Are EVs the answer? I'm not sure, but I think like the sentiment towards them has plummeted, and automakers are pivoting because it is not a matter of, if you build it, they will come. And I think making those, we needed brands like Volvo to make those bold.
And they were one of the first to commit to making that full switch by that time. So the fact that they're maybe the first to kind of reassess their goal.
Well, even Audi, right? When the new A5 and S5 came out, and with this redesigned Q5 is getting a plug-in hybrid powertrain, but there's the Q4 and the Q6, but there's prolonged plans. This platform, automakers are not abandoning gas power because of sentiment being the way that it is. Am I shocked? Not really. If you would have asked me a year ago, hey, if Volvo did this, would you be surprised? I would say yes. Given what's happened over the last year, I would say I'm not surprised.
I mean, I think we've had entire episodes on this before where from the very beginning, we thought that 2030 was extremely ambitious. And if they met that target, we would be really, really surprised if that happened. So we're not surprised that people are scaling back their plans. But you got to be bold to make it, for legitimacy alone, right? To tell people you are really like committed to it, you got to make a bold claim. And Volvo did that and I think, strongly pushing towards it. And is still, just because Volvo's not going entirely electric, the plan is still to be electrified. I think you're going to see those mild hybrids phased out, and it's going to be plugins like this redesigned or facelifted XC90 to complement the EX90, and you're going to see that throughout the lineup. So am I disappointed that Volvo's done this? Maybe a little bit, but I'm more disappointed in consumers because you can't expect Volvo to say, well, we're going to keep building EVs come hell or high water, and customers are like, but we're not going to buy your cars anymore. And Volvo goes, well, we're still going to build EVs. It's like you've got to protect your business, right? I mean, and EVs is so tricky because there's so many other factors, right? Besides consumers and automakers, there's like the public infrastructure, there's the government, and so like until we can get all of these parties to work together towards that goal, this is a very hard deadline to meet, right? So, am I surprised? No. Am I sad? Yes. The second part of Maroon's question is, in the event that Canada imposes a 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles, given that both Polestar and Volvo are owned by the same Chinese company, should current owners of these vehicles be concerned about the potential impacts on service or support in the future?
No. I mean, the simple answer is no. Keep in mind, these are Chinese-made vehicles that will face those tariffs. And I think I understand your question is that, like, could it impact their bottom lines enough that they could have to scale back their businesses because of how, or maybe out of retribution for the tariff situation? No, I don't think that there's concern. You know, both Geely and and Tesla are big enough that there's still going to be support. And they sell vehicles that are not. I think the EX90 is a good example, right? Which, Volvo builds the EX90 in the States, and then there's going to be EX90s built in China for the Asian Pacific market. That is the reality that you are going to see. It's hard to, without getting into the whole subject of the tariffs themselves, but no, I wouldn't be terribly concerned about, the impact on existing owners. That's my take.
Right. What about stuff like, and we're running out of time, but what about automakers like VinFast or even like Fisker, for example?
Fisker, I hardly knew her. No?
I walked right into that one. I should have known that was coming.
Fisker's done, right?
Yeah, like they filed for bankruptcy many times. So what are those owners supposed to do if the dealership and service network just evaporates here?
It's tough. A friend of ours, Matt Bubbers, wrote a, and I thought the headline was perfect. That he said that owners of the Fisker Ocean, because that's the only vehicle that was built, could be left, could be lost at sea. Because you do have
a good headline, though.
Because you do have issues like that, right? There has to be contingency for recalls, but if the whole company, that's the nice thing. Like when Saturn went under, for example, and Pontiac, when General Motors pulled the plug on those, there were because the company still existed, the network was still there for warranty claims and whatnot, and for recalls. With Fisk, I'm not sure what the answer is, but I wouldn't be worried about, any impact on existing. Yeah, it means that maybe we're, going to face, issues in the future and not have access to those cheap EVs that would otherwise come from China. But then at the same time, protecting the industry in North America, I guess, is the motivation for this. And also keep in mind, yes, it's not as complex as a car, but, Canada for years has been hit with tariffs and all kinds of, restrictions because of claims of dumping lumber, because we're such a massive lumber producer. And steel has been a big thing over the years for many countries. So these trade disputes and tariffs and all that stuff, this is as old as intergovernmental relations themselves.
Right.
And I think things will kind of, right now it's shocking, but it's going to kind of settle down in the short to medium term.
Yeah, because if we know politicians, they love to grandstand, right? I think this might be one of those things.
The dust will settle and things are going to change, right? That used to happen all the time with Japanese vehicles, right? And then the chicken tax, that was the whole thing, the U.S. retribution, and then Subaru with the Brat putting those jump seats in the back because they couldn't sell it was a truck, and so they had to make it a passenger vehicle, so they put removable plastic seats. It was very clever. So I also think that there could be ways, there are loopholes that are going to be found, and so anyways, I wouldn't be too concerned, Maroon, but that's just me.
Thank you so much, Maroon, for your question and for your loyal support. You should all be like Maroon. Make sure you subscribe to the show and our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all that. It would really help us out. Especially if you left a review for the show, if you really like the podcast, that's
Jodi,
also very helpful.
Here's what I'll ask you just before we leave. Am I the for not subscribing to Own the Road with AutoTrader?
100%.
There you go, guys. You heard it from Jodi. You know what you got to do.
Stay safe, drive safe, and we'll see you next time.